we've had visitors from Russia that didn't understand English. And I don't speak Russian, but we had a great time. We spent hours together pointing and looking at things. And that's very, very, very nice. You know, when I was in your country, it was a great experience. First of all, because we were so welcome. I felt like I was going to see family. So that was really awesome. But there were people that weren't real good at English, and obviously I don't speak Urdu.
Yeah.
But we were able to communicate, and that's one of the wonders of aviculture, is that it unites us all.
Yeah.
So getting back to your question, because we've deviated. So if you start in aviculture, I recommend budgies, cockatiels. If you progress, you go into conures, and then from conures, there's a whole array of species, ringnecks, etc., that are fairly easy to breed.
Okay.
When you get into the macaws and the Amazons and the cockatoos, you're dealing with sometimes complex personalities that require a little bit greater knowledge. You know, for pets, some common species, to me, a dusky conure is not a great looking bird, but my God, it's a fantastic pet. You know, they're wonderful. I often tell people that you have to try to match the bird's personality and its behaviors with the household. I don't recommend an African gray for a household that's very busy, full of children. That's not a household that a gray parrot will really thrive in. They like a quieter, more peaceful household. An Amazon loves noise and activity. We have two yellow napes here that are great talkers. And they delight having visitors. They delight having attention because they can scream and they can talk and they can carry on. The African grays just sort of hide, you know, behind the nest, or they go inside their nest until the visitors leave. So you want to match the bird to the household. And you don't have to jump in and get an African gray as your first pet. A cockatiel is a wonderful pet. In fact, I kept some until about 2 years ago, when I cut down on some of the birds that I had simply because of space. In time, you know, my time is limited, so I wanted to make sure that I gave the birds that I had the proper attention.
Okay.
But if I could, I would love to breed. If I had the time, or when I retire, I want to breed cockatiels again. I want to breed budgies, and I love black masked lovebirds, Abyssinian lovebirds, and I love Fisher's lovebird. I like the wild, the natural colors. Yes. I would love to have those again, but unfortunately, I don't have the time right now. So you don't have to have, you know, hyacinth macaws and palm cockatoos. There's a lot of species that are wonderful birds.
Yeah. Not as a beginner, but when you reach to some time when you think, although if somebody as experienced as you are is saying that, you know, I know less every other day. So how can people learn from, you know, their mistakes? So once they come to...
You know, I will tell you the best lesson. I am 60 years old.
Yeah.
I was born in August 1960. And I state that because people say, oh, no, you're not. Yes, I am 60 years old. When I was 18, I got into aviculture very young. My father bred pigeons and canaries. My grandmother bred pigeons. My great-grandmother kept parrots and pigeons. So there's been a long history of my involvement with birds and with animals. When I was 18, I went to visit a reverend by the name of Ramon Nogel in Florida.
Okay.
I lived up north. I came to Florida. And it was a trip to another world. I went to his home, and he was a Kardecian spiritualist preacher. Okay. So he was a medium for spirits. And, you know, I saw this and I thought, oh my God, where did I get into? What have I come to? And at the end of the third day, I had already packed my bags. I was going to leave. He said, you know, if I can teach you something, is listen to your birds. They will talk to you. You know, that's it. I've heard enough. He's crazy. I'm leaving you. Talk to me. And my grandfather, who was a highly educated man, said, maybe you are too literal in your interpretation. Maybe what he meant is that the birds communicate with you, not with words, but with actions. I was 18 years old. And I thought about it. And I thought about it. And at the end of the week, I was sitting talking to my grandfather. And my grandfather and grandmother helped me with my birds. My grandmother helped me till she was in her 90s. She would wash bowls and she would clean cages. I realized that he was right, that the birds do talk to you. They don't use words, but they use actions. Okay. So they communicate with us. And often in their communication, they teach me how little I know. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, do all macaws nest in trees or nest up above? I said, absolutely. In captivity, they all use a nest way up high on top of their aviary, or as high in their aviary as possible. Then I was doing my rounds with my birds, and I saw that a particular pair of scarlets had never nested, or 7 years old, never nested. They were bred here, their parents were bred here. So I started looking at the birds, and I opened up their nest, and there were cobwebs in there. Clearly, they had never been inside.
Yeah.
And she always sat at the bottom corner of her cage. And I started looking at her. She was basically saying, I don't want that nest. She sat in the same corner. The nest was up above. She was sitting on the floor. She was telling me, I don't like that nest. I don't want it where it's at. At the end of some days, I went in and I took out a chicken nest, which was basically a square open in the front. And I put it in that spot. Within days, she had laid eggs.
Wow.
She was communicating with me that she didn't want to be there. Another case, we keep species in groups. We don't mix cockatoos with macaws because cockatoos produce powder down and it can create an allergic reaction to macaws. If you do have them, you need to have some sort of separation to keep the contact.
Okay.
I had some sulfur crescent cockatoos, and there was one that always sat on one side of the cage. There was another pair in the middle, and the bird in the third cage sat there. They were telling me they wanted to be together. If one bird came down to eat, the bird in two cages down went down to eat. If one bird perched, it perched. They were telling me, hey, dummy, we're in love with each other. I put them together, and within days, they nested. So they communicate, understand them.
Yeah. I've seen a nest box that you received. I would once again talk about it for the benefit of my audience as well. The metal nest box that you received from a friend from South America?
Yes, from Cuba.
Yeah.
So I get a call from a gentleman saying, I would like to send you a nest. And I said, oh, thank you. He says, I make nest boxes. Oh, that would be great. So I have a special nest box design for cockatoos that break eggs. The egg, there's a slight slant, the egg is laid, it rolls out, it's safe, it can be removed. I didn't know at the time that he lived in Cuba. Okay. And Cuba is extremely poor, and everything is difficult to acquire. Mm-hmm. And I got this nest, and I was so appreciative. I just thought, my God, this is so incredible that this gentleman is so generous. And we use it. And it was immediately installed, and I did a little video, and I did it in Spanish and in English, because it shows that we can be worlds apart, but yet united. So I put the nest box up, and it is a metal nest. And we use metal nest boxes because we live in Florida, and we have lots of wild parrots here. All of them were introduced. We have severe macaws and migrant conures and blue crowns and mandays and canary wing and white-winged parakeets, and all of these species that escaped from aviaries and became established. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure lead by example, and I made nest boxes that are metal that the birds can't chew out. Now, they have a wood bottom, and they're prepared, they're placed in a way where the sun doesn't reflect on them, so they don't become an oven. And also the birds here don't nest when it's very hot. They nest when the weather is cooler. So we use these metal nest boxes for everything from hyacinth macaws to little half-moon conures.
Yeah.
And my collection is very varied. At one point, I only wanted to have the rare species. Today, I have species that I really like, irrespective if they're common or rare. I breed a lot of little conures. I have green cheeks and half moons and duskies because I like them.
Tony,
I really like little birds.
over here, I would like to ask for a favor, not this time, but whenever you get free in the coming days or weeks, probably. I won't say months because I'm too impatient for that. It would be wonderful if you give us a tour of your aviary as well, and I would show people online what the beauty is, because that is the main point. I want everyone to know the way you take care of them and the way they are housed, so that we can inspire people over here to get towards that perfection.
Right. One of the things that I have been trying to get is a friend that has a drone to come and video it from above. Yeah. Because I think if you see it from a drone, you will appreciate it more than walking around. When you walk around, there's so much tree cover that often you don't even have good light.
Okay.
I started with a principle, and I always treat others how I want to be treated. If you treat me nice, you will have a very nice person in me. Yeah. If you're nasty to me, I can be just as nasty. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that my workers were as comfortable as they could be. If I were taking care of somebody's bird, I wanted to walk around nice cement walkways. I would want shade. And that's why I did all these things. I have cement walkways that are, that high, so if it rains, it doesn't flood. I have tree cover. Obviously, the area around the part of the cage is protected from the elements. With a roof, part of it is open so the birds can bathe when it rains. But the working area is fairly enclosed. And then we have water everywhere for hosing. In fact, tomorrow we pressure wash the walkways again.
Yeah.
And that's something we don't do all the time, simply because we need a machine that pressure washes. It makes a lot of noise and all of that. But the cages are washed.
Christmas as well, you want to give them a treat.
So I promise you I will do a video. I think that it would be interesting. And I would like to do a video of, basically how we do things. We also give the birds enrichment. Right now we have lots of green coconuts. So if you walk around, all my cages have green coconuts.
That's wonderful.
We plant coconuts. We plant palm trees. We grow many things. We give them banana leaves. We give them palm leaves. Something to keep them busy.
Yeah. What do you think? Have you ever hand-tamed an Amazon for yourself?
Yeah, so remember, I came from an era, or I started in an era where we were dealing only with wild birds.
Yeah.
We would go and buy a wild bird and then have to tame it. And we saw the evolution of taming from where you would grab a bird in a towel, wrap it up, and touch the head until the bird gave up trying to bite, to, areas where the food would be taken away and the bird would be forced to eat from your hand. that was abusive. At that time, no one really understood a lot of these things. So it comes from a different time era. But, Amazons, yes, they can be tamed. What I always recommend is that we try to teach them up the ladder, which is you use sticks to get the bird to walk up, and then at a certain point you eliminate a stick with a hand. Once the bird is comfortable with you, he may grab your finger, but he's not going to crush it.
Yeah.
I always talk about a Moluccan cockatoo that I had in the 80s. And Cookie was a wild import. When I got the bird, it was screaming, hissing, it would throw itself on its back. And 3 months later, I could do whatever I wanted with that bird. I started by, I would sit down with it in a towel and I would touch it to let it know that I wasn't going to hurt it.
Yeah.
Then eventually I eased up the towel and it would sit there and I would pet it. And we became such great friends that an anecdote that my mother always tells everybody was that I went away to study parrots in the wild, and Cookie, that cockatoo's name, so missed me that in one night, Cookie let out all the birds, opened up all the bird cages, and let all the birds out, hoping that the chaos that ensued would get me to come back. Obviously it did, because my fear was that they would pair up birds incorrectly and then they would fight. So you can tame birds very, very easily if you have the patience. You're not going to get a bird to stand up, to stand on your hand in 2 minutes. But with some effort, you can achieve it.
Sorry. I had an African grey, and it stayed with us for 6 to 7 months, and suddenly one day it flew away. It was in my room. We used to take it as a family member, honestly, and
right.
It would fly off to our shoulders. I never wanted to pluck its flying feathers because of the known fact that why should I cut them. But now my family is missing him, and obviously I am missing him. But if we get hold of another one, how do I teach that bird not to fly out? And not
you can, it's a natural instinct. So your options are several. You either make sure that windows are always closed, that you don't have fans going, because fans, a bird can take off, can get impacted by a fan. So one option is to keep it fully flighted, and you can train free flight. It's always good to free flight birds because it gives them the opportunity to recall down. What happens with most parrots is that they gain altitude and then they don't know how to come down. So they're afraid, they keep flying until they literally collapse and drop.
Okay.
The other option is you don't clip the wings, but you can tape a few flight feathers, and eventually the bird reduces the flight ability. It doesn't want to fly. You can use a harness. Harnesses are widely used. I personally don't like them. They're not normal.
Yes.
But they're successfully used by many people. And finally you can free flight the bird. You can train it to free fly. And once you train it to free fly, then you can even take it outside, fly it in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
I am. I have come across some kind of tips for training the birds for free flying. For that, I'm going to nag you again.
Yeah, you need to, when you train to free fly, some people want to use starvation. Starvation never works. You want to coax the bird to come to you. And you start off at a short distance and you increase the distance. And then when you do start going outside, you put a little string in the leg band.
Okay.
And you start short distances. And the reason you use a string that you hold is if the bird takes off, you can recall, you have some control. Yeah. But generally, parrots are very, very smart. They learn very quickly. And, you know, in 3 or 4 months, you can have a fully flighted bird. We have some, I've had a pair of scarlet macaws that when I lived in Miami Beach, I now live in the country. They learned to free fly the neighborhood. And what I did is we had large trees on the property. I clipped their wings and I would put them up in a tree. And they eventually got to know the entire property. And I stopped clipping their wings. They learned to fly. And since they knew the property, they knew the routine, they would fly and come back at home at a certain time, and they would go inside their cages because that was a routine. They were put up in a tree. When it started to get dark, I would take them down, put them in their cage. They learned this. In fact, they knew the entire neighborhood. They would go around the neighborhood visiting neighbors, and they would pull clotheslines, and they would chew trees, and every now and then I would get nasty letters from neighbors saying, your macaws just got in my yard and plucked my mangoes or my avocados and dropped them.
Tony over here, I am really glad that you joined in after so many, unfortunate events that we went through during our last session. I'm really glad that you gave us some time. Although I always,
it's my pleasure.
I'm saying, Tony, that it's never enough to have sessions with you, and we will keep on nagging you like this from time.
Thank you. I am honored. You know how I see it, and many aviculturists don't see it that way. I see it that it is my responsibility to share what I have learned, because I don't want to die and have all this information left behind. I want what little I know to be shared. I want to help people. I want people to be successful. Aviculture has seen a growth this year that no one had predicted.
Exactly.
It's everywhere. It doesn't matter where, whether it be Australia or Argentina, Pakistan or Canada. The worldwide, aviculture saw an explosion. We need to make sure that we share. And you know, sometimes I get very angry when I get pictures of very dirty cages.
Yeah.
But my goal is to get people to keep the birds healthier, because if birds are healthy, they will be successful. And if they are successful, they will stick to aviculture. This isn't a book that you read or a scientific paper. You read it, you put it down, and you forget about it. They require a long-term commitment. And if you get benefit, if your birds breed, if they're healthy, if they learn to talk well, you will stick with it long-term. If they sicken and die, partly because of neglect or poor diet or poor hygiene, you're going to get out of it. And you never know when the next person that's going to really bring some great achievements to aviculture is going to be.
That is why I wanted your guidance in this regard for the new fanciers and the old ones as well. As you said, we learn by every passing day. So thank you very much, because we know you are short on time for your conference that is about.
Yes, I can go a few more minutes. So just sort of recap.
Yeah.
You know, understand that hygiene is important.
Okay.
Understand that diet is very important.
Yeah.
Birds are like a piggy bank. The money you put in is what you're going to get out. If you don't put anything in, you're going to get nothing out.
Yes.
So invest in your birds, invest in time, in studying them, invest in keeping them clean, and in feeding them a good diet, and they will reward you. There's nothing more than I like than seeing young aviculturists. Look, when I started out, I had no help. I had no help because we really didn't know much back then. There was no surgical sexing or pellets. There was no avian knowledge, avian medicine knowledge. We made a lot of mistakes. We fell a lot. And, you know, I had lots of birds die. We didn't know. We didn't know that diet was so important. We didn't know that hygiene was so important. We learned along the ways. And when I beat up people for these reasons, I do so because I've already fallen, and I don't want them to fall. I want them to learn from my mistakes and to be successful. I would like to close by several things. I would like to wish everyone a new year, and I know that in Islam it's not January 1st is not the new year, but
That's
you know, calendars, Western calendars change, and I want to wish everyone a better new year. Hopefully, we will be able to take COVID under control.
Hopefully. So worried,
yes.
honestly.
Although COVID has been devastating for the world, but incredibly good for aviculture. It has brought us together.
That's probably because everybody was sitting home and they wanted to get hold of an hobby, and this is what they got, to our luck.
Yes.
One more small question, Tony. I'm sorry, I just remembered it. So I wanted to ask you a quickie. What do you think about dried shrimps and all these things that people want to give to their birds during the breeding season? Do you recommend that, or no, you don't want that?
No, look, I for example, will use canned tuna packed in water as a source of protein for African grays, as part of an overall diet. And that canned tuna is mixed with vegetables, with whole grain cooked pasta. And the idea is to boost the protein level using some animal protein. And the only reason I do this is because I've seen wild African grays eat snails. I don't want to feed snails because of the risk that they carry parasite eggs. So I can feed tuna. It's a good protein. I worry about things like dried shrimp, etc., because of the risk of botulism. You know, unless you know the source, is very good. You know, be careful. There's better sources of protein. I don't like feeding meat, obviously, because it's, you know, it's the wrong protein for these things. You can boost protein with nuts. You can use almonds and walnuts, etc. And they're a very good source. The only species we give any animal protein to that we keep is the African grays, and it's tuna. If I had Kias, I would give Kias meat because they would eat it. They're one of the very few parrots that would eat it. Some of the subspecies of Kakarikis and some of the species of Kakarikis live on very desolate, cold islands where they will eat washed animals that get washed ashore. But it's the few species. Most parrots are omnivorous, but not carnivorous.
Okay.
So, you know, avoid things that can be risky for bacteria.
Okay. Thank you very much once again. I would like to thank you on behalf of all the audience that you would have after we publish this session, because it's so beneficial. I learned so many new things, and I'm thankful to you for that regard. And hopefully we will see you on my channel once again on YouTube, hopefully very soon. I'm not going to nag you that much. Don't worry. I know you work quite hard.
Fine, don't worry. I always oblige. It takes me some time, but I always oblige. You know, a couple of final notes. Remember, dramatic changes to induce breeding. If you can, you fill the nest up with wood, because that chewing, that darkness, that unification of the pair will impact breeding and fertility. It also detracts the male from being aggressive to the female, to preparing the nest. Remember that parrots are living creatures that get bored. If you give them branches, if you give them things, it doesn't distract them from breeding. It merely enriches their life. And that's important. You know, change their water, change their food daily. I detest, and this is something that I see here in the US, where the birds are fed a big bowl of food once a week. That's not good. You know, the birds will eat everything one day, and then by the end of the week, they're going hungry. It's not healthy. I don't encourage that. So treat them always as you would like to be treated if you were them. And if you do, you will be very successful. So in ending, please be careful with this COVID. Be cognizant that there are people that are financially struggling very, very seriously.
Yes.
If they are, and they are a fellow aviculturist, give them a little bit of food for their birds.
Yes.
You know, God will always look at you with kindness if you share.
Yes.
I always believe that if the more I share, the more blessings that I get.
Oh, yes.
And I believe that's something that you clearly understand when I say that.
Yeah.
You know, keep others in mind. And if you see someone suffering from depression, and many people are suffering from depression because of the lockdowns, you know, bring them over, give them a small bird. You may just make their life very happy. You may have a new aviculturist, and you know, share this passion. Again, stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Let's hope that in the coming months,
yes,
we will be able to resume normalcy.
And hopefully you will
a convention in
Pakistan
Pakistan.
us, right?
I believe there's a convention being organized in Pakistan.
Yes.
Hopefully, COVID will become a past.
Yes.
Yes. And it will happen. I think the last convention was a huge success.
Yes.
Faiz Khan did an incredible job at organizing it. And I think that some of us from the West, you know, I've learned not to believe everything the press says, because the press is invariably slanted. And when we went there, I think all of us were very surprised at how friendly we were welcomed. And that's something that I will always take with me to my tomb, those incredibly good moments. And I have to tell you, your food was exceptionally good. So I came away, I fell in love with your pink teeth. I wish I could get here, we can't, but I did. Again, thank you for your time. And we never say goodbye, we say until we meet again.
Yes, until we meet again with you and with my audience as well. Thank you very much once again. I can't thank you enough, honestly, the way you have
pleasure.
Gone through all this hassle for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.